Hello, this is Elizabeth Clare Brewington with Discover Brightside, the video podcast. And as you know, we've been doing a lot with emotional intelligence, and this month we're working on empowering leaders and helping them balance their work, life, and relationships. And I have an expert with me, Dr. Stephen Balzac, who has given me time today, and I wanted to make his time worthwhile with this interview. So, welcome, Dr. Stephen, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. So I will say I started out as a software developer back in a while ago. MIT, I did my undergraduate and graduate work there. I planned to have a career developing software, and then as I worked at a bunch of different startup companies, sadly none of them were called Google. Uh, I really discovered the companies didn't fail because of their technology. They failed because of poor leadership, poor organization. And after the dot-com crash, I had an opportunity to go back to school and I started studying organizational psychology to better understand why companies succeeded and failed and to understand when I was in management roles why I was successful and why I wasn't, because I hated the thought of managing by magic spell. And I wanted to create something repeatable. And that eventually led me into consulting and writing books and being a adjunct professor for a number of years.
Wow, that's incredible. And when you become an expert and you spend so much time to develop books and give back to the world, I always say people who write books are really giving knowledge back to the world. So that I have to say congratulations just for doing that. And you talk a lot about organization and organizational principles with leadership. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, one of the, one of the things I always saw a lot of was a lot of what turned out to be myths about leadership. Oh, you have to tell people what to do. Sort of true, but not in the way a lot of people think. And eventually, what I came to realize is leadership is about, in a sense, three things. It's about empathy, it's about empowering people, and it's about engaging them. And each of these things obviously is complicated in its own way. It has its own depth to it. But the best leaders care about people as people. And that's your emotional intelligence element of this, is that a robot is not a good leader. Or the example I like to give, being a fan of the original Star Trek, was Mr. Spock was never that good as a leader because he just couldn't connect emotionally with people.
Yes.
So, but once you've connected with people, you need to give them direction. You need to help them understand strategy and help them develop a sense of where they're going. And that's your engagement and empowerment aspects. Clear goals, understanding the company strategy, understanding what the company wants to do, is engagement, helping people develop the skills they need, give them the opportunities they need, making it easy for people to do their jobs is your empowerment aspect. And from those three things, kind of everything else follows. And a lot of this is because, it's right in the term leader. The person leader we think of as they're in the front. They are higher up, and we use that image, that metaphor all the time. They're higher up in the organization. And we think of people who are higher up as having a clearer vision of where we're going. Right? The person
Yeah.
up higher sees further. It's just the way that's just how our brains interpret the world. And so we look to those leaders to tell us, okay, which direction should we focus our energy?
So, what do you think are some of the challenges that organizations and leaders are facing today? This is the new year now. So, what do you think
Mhm.
some of these challenges are?
Well, for one, we're facing a rapidly changing world. I mean, things keep changing. It's like every day there's
Yes, I
something
know.
new going on. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty, economic uncertainty coming from the administration. And, whatever my personal feelings about that, as in business, we have to live with it, we have to work with it. And that involves developing the ability to be adaptable, to shift, to sort of to go with the shift, to go with the flow. Like I like to say, because I've been a martial arts practitioner is my hobby for many years. You have to not fight the force. You have to learn how to roll with it, go with it, redirect it. But the other thing is that a lot of people who are in leadership roles are not comfortable setting direction. So they're either too harsh about it or too vague about it.
Hmm.
They don't connect to people and set the direction. And I remember at one company I worked at where I was trying to get a project off the ground, a marketing sales project off the ground, and I said to the CEO, this will go a lot faster if you will state that what we're doing, this step is a priority. He says, why do I need to do that? And I said, because you're in charge. And he didn't like hearing that. So
No,
no, no,
no.
no. I'm not in charge. I just kind of direct things. I'm like,
And I think that's one of the reasons why you do a lot of role playing and you have LARP in your therapy. So tell us a little bit about that. That sounds so interesting because when someone's on the top, they don't like to be told what to do. And how do you get them bring out the best in them?
so let me just say, I'm not a therapist, and should not be thought of it as therapy. And I mentioned this, for out of courtesy to all my colleagues who are actual therapists. I don't want to step on their toes. Um, so live action role playing, as I design it, is a very detailed as inquiry. It's a very three-dimensional scenario. For example, a typical activity that I will run people through is a role-playing game, a fairy tale game that my wife and I developed. My wife's a clinical psychologist. Um, and in this game, everyone is taking on characters that we're all familiar with from the fairy tales that we grew up with, um, although we've somewhat gone in the spirit of fractured fairy tales to make this game. But the whole idea of this is that we're creating reality out of fantasy. Because by putting you in this fantasy setting where you're playing a noble knight, or maybe a not very noble knight, or a wicked witch, or the evil duke, or the noble tailor, each of these things, you have goals, you have people you need to work with, you need to find allies, you need to obtain resources, and you don't really have a clear path on how to do it, so you can't optimize. And one of the advantages of this, and I should mention, I have a book I'm working on that I've proposed to Springer, um, who published my last book on this topic. But the whole idea is that you don't have a clear path, which means you can't sit there and optimize it. You can't say, oh, yeah, I'm doing this type of leadership
Yes.
exercise and it's clear I have to do this, I have to do this. We have to solve these three math problems. We have to do it in this order. Okay, let's go. And I've been in plenty of those exercises where the only thing is, can I do math under pressure without making a mistake? Um, which isn't really leadership. So with this type of free form game, you're all in there and none of you quite know what to do, which means you have to figure out how to work together, figure out who you can trust, who you can't, how much you can trust them. And for someone who's used to being in charge, well, they might not be playing that role. Or they might be playing opposite a junior employee who is in a position to negotiate with them. So it builds connection. That's that empathy piece, because by the end of this game, you've done something intense and fun with other people. You've gotten a real sense of how you operate under pressure and how your rest of your team operates under pressure, which allows you to engage with them better. And you can see what people's strengths and weaknesses are, which lets you, again, build them up more, which is your empowerment aspect. And because it's a fantasy setting, when you screw up, as we all do,
Yeah.
it's your character who screwed up. I had to play my character. That was how I felt I had to play the character. And that distance, that ability to create a little distance between yourself and mistake makes it much easier to learn from both our mistakes and the successes that we have.
That sounds really good. And so tell us about the books. Where can we get them? And everybody, please get the book and write a review because that's what we do at Brightside. So tell us a little bit about the books.
So my two published books so far are the 36-hour course in organizational development. It was published by McGraw-Hill, and Organizational Psychology for Managers, published by Springer Scientific. They're both available on Amazon. The key thing, as I've discovered, is you have to search under my full name, Stephen R. Balzac or Stephen Balzac, because if you don't, you get Honoré de Balzac.
Okay.
And I'm sadly not quite as famous as he is. Um, to be fair, I think his novels are probably more interesting than books on psychology. But I did have someone say they couldn't put down one of my books, so that was very encouraging.
Now, you'll be surprised that, many people are given leadership positions. Now, of course, there are some that are trained their whole life and, they rose from the ranks. But then there are some leaders that just were thrown into the position. They
Mhm.
inherited a business. Their father was the hero and now they've stepped in. No experience. Then you have many cases where, somebody likes you and promotes you or whatever. But for whatever reason, many leaders lack training and are
Mhm.
thrown into a job. And so books like yours can really help them. And I think just from listening to you and from what I've read, I know these books and McGraw and the publishers are not going to pick up books that are ordinary. So I know that just the name that just those publishers alone tell me that the caliber that the book is written in. So I'm looking forward to reading it and having you on our show and helping our leaders get there because I think we're living in such a crazy world with AI and so many changes going on around us that we really need to read and learn things for ourselves. Because one of the things I've said over and over again on the channel is that AI is just spitting out old information because what they've been programmed is all our libraries, all our wealth, and there's nothing wrong with that. That makes them brilliant and makes us brilliant because we get access to all
Mhm.
this information, but we have to create new information and be smarter than the machine. And we can only do that when we read and learn and comprehend for ourselves.
Yeah.
Because if we're not doing that, then we're just listening to what's being told to us. And we hope we don't become a robot society where the robot is smarter than us. Oh my goodness, I think about that all the time. So read Dr. Stevens' books, and we'll make sure that it's available in our bookstore, so you don't have to hunt for the link. You can just click on the link and find it. And thank you so much for this interview. And I just love what you're doing, the role playing, and everything sounds really great. You've been discovered on the Discover channel. Would you like to say any last minute comments?
If it's okay to list my website, it's www.7stepsahead.com. That's the number 7stepsahead.com. And yeah, I work with companies to run them through these games and then process the experience to create better leaders, more effective teams. I had a client who discovered they thought they had a problem with people withholding information. And as a result of participating in one of these activities, what they discovered was that their schedules were so aggressive that when new information came in, no one had time to stop and think about it. And it was absolutely transforming for them. So I would, you know,
Yeah,
uh,
that looks
three
great.
main thing, I guess. And I will say I've got a book in progress on using LARP for leadership and organizational development. And hopefully before long, I'll be able to officially announce it. But I'm waiting on hearing back from the publisher.
Yeah. So 7 steps ahead. You can be 7 steps ahead of your competition,
Mhm.
of your team. You can be smarter and brighter. So get his book. Thank you for watching Discover Brightside.
Thank you, Elizabeth.